Welcome to the Real Estate Family Podcast. I am your host, O.T. Gibbons. The mission of this podcast is to help you make money with real estate, whether you are a homeowner, future real estate investor, or already investing in real estate. If our misfit crew of a family can make money in real estate, so can you. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, my brother, Drew Gibbons. How you doing, Drew?
Hello, here we go.
On today's podcast, we're going to be covering the worst things to put in your home that you should avoid. We're going to be going through layman's terms where we explain complicated real estate issues to help you better understand what is going on. And we're going to answer the people. But before we get to all that, Drew, we did a thing this week.
We did a thing.
A lot of people said we weren't supposed to do it, but we bought a new investment property. We're sitting here in February of 2024. Everybody's saying, don't do it. Rates are too high. We did it anyway. Bought it for $600,000. Well, we bought it for $500,000, put about $100,000 worth of work into it. And hopefully here at some point, we're going to see it go up in value. You've been here all week working. I don't really know what I do here.
It's a really cute home. It required a lot of tender love and care, painting. We had to replace some of the appliances. It has a ton of potential in a great neighborhood. And you're right, we just did the opposite of what everyone told us to do. So
yeah, and you were here grinding. My 70-year-old mom and dad, all I saw was videos. I was not actually here. They were doing a bunch of painting and demo work. You were here. How'd that go?
it's really amazing how easy they make painting seem. We've been painting for years now, but how easy they make painting seem in those videos on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. But I got to tell you, just prep alone, like priming a room, like a dark red room, and we'll make some stuff and you guys will see it, but this was like a blood red, dark, absorbed into the drywall kind of red. So we had to do 2 coats of primer, which if you've ever done primer, you got to prep all the trim, you've got to cover all the outlets, you got to unscrew all the outlets, you've got to put tape around every single little corner of stuff that you can't get the primer color. So just prep alone when you're painting takes at least 2 times as long as actually painting. And if you choose a dark green or a dark red or a darker color, do not do that if you want to sell your house, because the next buyer is going to be very turned off to the idea of how long that's going to take. That really, we were not expecting it to take that long because of the darkness of the paint.
All I can think about when I hear you say that is the amount of money it would have cost to hire a painter and do it, just because the time cost of the labor is going to be like multiple days for them to have to put the primer on, come back, put another coat on. It's just going to take forever. So obviously we were doing that. We don't love to do that stuff, but you got to save money when you need to. In order to buy this home, I will tell you, I handle kind of the financing, purchase, negotiation side. Drew is our property manager, construction manager, hard labor kind of guy. But getting the loan was one of the more difficult ones I've done, because you can just tell in the environment that the lenders are not super comfortable lending money. So even somebody like us that's done dozens of loans still had a hard time with it. Yes, we did take a very high rate. I'll tell you, it was in the 8% range to get this deal done. And we're fine with it because we're going to, in 6 months or a year, we're hopeful that it's going to be worth $800,000 or more. And we're going to cash out, refinance at a lower rate and take a couple $100,000 back and go buy another one after we rent this thing out.
But yeah, it's a great purchase in a great neighborhood, on a great lot, on a great street. It was really hard to pass up. If the market becomes great and it turns, we would have regretted not buying this house. This is a great investment.
Yeah, we felt as though it was bottoming. We felt like this number was, well, first of all, it was almost 150, 200 grand less than what they'd originally listed it for. I had been on the market for several months. We came in with the real estate agent was extraordinarily uncomfortable with, and we wanted the house so bad. I was the only person that was not uncomfortable. My mom and brother wanted this investment property very badly. I think everyone was a little uncomfortable with the number I wanted to go in at, but it ended up working out. And they ended up coming down because they'd been on the market for 6 months and they had nothing, and there was no sign of relief on the horizon. So if you're thinking about buying, that is a good strategy to take right now.
I keep seeing these things on social media about if you buy between December 1st and February, the end of February, it's going to be like you're the people before COVID happened. And that's hopefully the group that we are in, because again, it was such a good deal. And you can tell the vulnerability of sellers is still pretty strong right now, because the fact that we came in so low, we were expecting them to drive to our house and slap us across the face. It was insultingly low. So we were shocked when we got the counter. We were like, "Oh my God, it worked! He's a genius."
It is, but it was the right opportunity to come at this house after they've been on the market for a very long time and clearly had no back. There, I remember saying to the listing agent when he asked me about the number, I remember saying like, "Okay, well, what is your other option? Not sell it? Okay, like cool. Don't sell it then. We're willing to buy it." Just not nearly at the number that you and your buyers are thinking, you and your sellers are thinking.
And what's scary is there's such low inventory across the nation that if the market turns and macro stuff happens, this house could be worth 20, 30, 40% more. So we feel like we really got lucky, and we're fine paying the 8%, 8.5%. We'll just refinance and we'll still have all the equity in the house and it'll do great. But that's a risk and a chance we were willing to take.
Yeah, if you really boil it down to what is the difference in the interest that you're paying from a 8+% rate to, let's say we're able to get it down to 5 or 6 as an investment property. I mean, the difference in interest is for 6 months or a year, a couple $1,000s. It's not, it's really, and considering we might have made 200, 300,000, it's kind of negligible.
You go on these mortgage calculators, everybody does it. I mean, any first-time home buyer, I mean, we've been realtors for God only knows how long. It feels like 5 lifetimes. I think it's been 15 years. But you go on these mortgage calculators on these websites and you type in the difference between 8%. Everyone hears 8%, and it's like, oh, 8%. But you type in the difference between 8% on 500,000 and 6%, and it's like a couple grand. And if you can afford that and you can eat it until the market changes and you can refi, it's worth it, folks. It's worth it.
I should state for the record, we're also sitting in the house that we bought.
In outdoor lawn chairs.
Yeah, so moving forward, as we buy rental properties, and we're going to be hopefully buying lots and lots of them, we will try to do every podcast the day that we buy the house, in the house. Hopefully someday we'll have like construction going on. So with all that being said, let's get to our first subject, which is the worst thing to put in your home that you should avoid. This covers a myriad of topics, and today's is going to be what?
HVAC systems. I'm telling you what, if you buy investment properties, these things are a nightmare. Just do window units. And I'm going to tell you a great story why. We had a tenant call us and tell us that their HVAC wasn't cooling on the top floor. And thinking it was a much bigger issue than it was, I went over there and I looked at the system and I opened up the door, and it's literally an ice cube, like an ice block. You could chip away at the HVAC system and put ice in your glass, not a refrigerator. So turns out the whole big thing was just a filter replacement, because if you don't replace the filter, it creates a wall of dust. And if you've ever seen a filter that's not replaced, it's just this wall of dust and the system just runs, but no fresh air circulates, creating this ice block. So I go downstairs to the tenant, and in our leases as real estate people and investors, it says the tenant is responsible for the replacement of the filters, which is a very easy thing to do for a tenant. And so I go downstairs to the tenant and I explain her all of this. I tell her the whole thing. And she looks at me deadpan and she goes, "What's a filter?" So a little bit of a home lesson for everybody. Make it easy on yourself. Get window units for investment properties, or even if you're a homeowner, replacing your filters is vital.
I think that's maybe the important piece to take away here, is that obviously homeowners listening are going to have an HVAC unit more than likely. And there's certain things you have to be very aware of with these units that we've learned over the years from owning a million houses. if you don't take care of the system, it's going to break and faster than it should, and it's going to be really expensive. But they're really not that hard to maintain. They're just not. They're not as difficult to maintain as people think. Really what you need to do is twice a year, 4 times a year, change your filters, and you need to have the system maintenance. You need to have it cleaned. You need to have somebody come look at it. If you just take care of it, it's going to last a long time. And if you don't, this kind of stuff's going to happen.
Exactly. And look, if you guys follow us and you go through our stuff on all of our socials, you'll see that one of our big things is just general laziness. Homeowners, tenants, they just want stuff done for them. They want to call somebody or have somebody come out. So many of these things can be remedied just by fixing your dishwasher filter, which I'll bet you none of you out there even knew there was a filter in your dishwasher. That's right. Go look in the bottom. You got to replace that too. See, that's the other thing. People don't know this stuff. We're here to help you with this. So general laziness, lack of understanding, these are the kinds of things we're here to help with. And just, again, homeowners being generally lazy, they just want to call a guy and have it fixed. Tenants want to call the landlord because they pay X, Y, Z in rent and they feel like they don't have to simply just replace a filter. That costs $3.
I think it's more like a lack of knowledge or understanding. And I also do think it's a sense of like people just believing that the home will take care of itself for whatever reason. And a home takes a lot of care. If you're going to buy a home, you have to make sure that you're willing to do the upkeep work. Our father has an expression he's told us for a million years: if you take care of your property, it'll take care of you. And it's very true. If you put in the time and effort to take care of your home, when you go to sell it, you're going to make a lot of money. And since you're living in that home as a primary residence, it's going to be tax-free, and we'll talk about all that stuff on future podcasts. But the truth of the matter is you just have to make the effort to understand your home as much as you can. You don't need to be an expert, but if you have this conversation with my wife all the time, if you see something, say something, right? Like if you see a little water spot, don't just like ignore it. It's not just going to go away. If you hear something with your dishwasher, if you see water spitting back up in your sink, if you have issues, if you feel like your HVAC is having a problem cooling or heating, like do something about it. That's kind of what we're saying here.
All of this may sound ridiculous. Why are these guys making a podcast about if you see water, I'm going to fix something? Not true. You would be amazed at how many people look at water, mold, any issues with moisture or dampness, and they just go about their day. It's amazing. It will shock you. 15 years in this business between the two of us. It will stun you, the stuff we have seen. It's overwhelmingly jarring how easy a lot of it could be fixed just by knowledge and not being so lazy.
I think the main takeaway that people listening about HVAC systems, I think these are the things you should take away. Number one is get your system maintenance twice a year. Fall, spring, get somebody to come out and look at it. Change your air filters, especially if you're having any work done on your home or if you've got dogs or kids, and that dust does build up in those filters, especially if there's construction or any kind of work being done. That will build up. I think some other helpful tips would be if you've got a dual zone, make sure if you've got multiple thermostats that you actually have multiple HVAC systems. This is something we came across on our home is we had 2 thermostats. My wife was putting, God bless her, was putting one on cool and one on heat. We only have one HVAC system. They can't operate in both. So you're putting the system into hyperdrive and you're burning out the motor. So just having this basic knowledge will help you spend less money, will help you keep your HVAC system for longer, make you more comfortable in your home, and then when you sell it, be able to make more. All right, let's move on to layman's terms. In this segment of the podcast, we are going to talk about complicated real estate issues going on in the world. I'm a nerd. I have my MBA. I worked in commercial equities and investment for a very long time. I am constantly obsessed with all of this stuff. Drew is an expert at oversimplifying just about anything. And I'm going to explain these things to him. He is then going to boil them down into the simplest terms, aka layman's terms so that you can have the best understanding of what is going on.
I genuinely have no idea what he's about to say. Like, no idea. This is not scripted. This is really right off the cuff. And if I might add, shut up, nerd.
So in this week's segment of Layman's Terms, we're going to talk about the doom loop. I had seen this mentioned in a 60 Minutes interview where they've been talking about major city doom loops. And then I saw a great article in the Commercial Observer outlining really some very scary specifics about Washington, D.C.'s doom loop that I found really, really interesting. So this article in the Commercial Observer talked about how total assessed commercial real estate values in Washington, D.C. are down $11 billion from 2021 to 2023. So I think it was something like the value of the commercial real estate was $112 billion and is now down to $101 billion. And the reason that matters is that the total collectible tax value of that to the city of Washington, D.C. is about $200 million. So because the values of the commercial real estate have come down, their property tax bills have come down. So the district is collecting much less in taxes. And the part that is not mentioned in this article is that on top of it, the businesses that have vacated those buildings, they're paying taxes to the district, or they were. So not only is the district losing the property tax value, they're also losing the value of the tax dollars coming in from those businesses. Experts estimate that over the next 4 years, 65% of tenant leases in the District of Columbia are going to expire and they're going to need to be renewed. 65%. DC's CFO actually came out and says that they should be prepared to lose possibly another $250 to $300 million in tax revenue.
Damn.
So it actually gets, do you follow that? You follow what I'm saying with like the amount of tax revenue the city's losing by businesses leaving?
My immediate response is, damn.
It's a lot of money, and that goes to pay all of the functions of a major city, and that's happening in New York, Chicago, LA. This article is specifically about DC. So yeah, it's crazy because it actually gets even worse than that. So the commercial real estate market is a $20 trillion market. The office market of that is about $3 trillion. Estimates say there's about $6 trillion of debt on the $20 trillion commercial real estate market cap. I actually believe it's a lot higher than that. I mean, I believe that in the $3 trillion office market that there's got to be more than $1.5 trillion in debt. In my mind, it would be more like $1.8 trillion in debt, but that's just my opinion. I don't have any facts on that. But here's the thing, most of that $6 trillion in estimated debt, and then the really spooky part is that the people, of course, the general partners and the big money have kind of gotten their money out. The people still holding these properties, it's going to be pension funds, it's going to be retirement funds, it's insurance companies. Like, that's really the spooky part about this that no one's really talking about. And, it screams government bailout at some point. Yeah.
That seems like the only way.
Yeah, and you see Bowser talking about trying to get Biden to push people back to federal workers back to DC to get into the offices because it's killing retail. They can't get anybody to buy lunch there. They can't get anybody to shop there. Like, this loop is almost never ending, and if they can't get people to go back to the office, I don't know how it ends.
So let me see if I've got you here.
Okay.
You threw out a lot of buzzwords. Yep. A lot of big numbers, trillions, billions, amortized. Like you hit me with a lot there. But let me see if I've got this. There is this loop. There are these really big commercial buildings that employ a lot of people and they have a lot of renters. Those renters are businesses. Those businesses have employees. They pay rents that then pay the mortgages to these banks. If something like COVID comes around and forces a lot of those companies that are on those leases to have their employees work from home, makes them second guess, hey, we don't really need this space. So then the commercial building and the landlord is kind of left holding the bag.
Well, and the city.
And the city. And if you don't have the money to pay the mortgage and the taxes, then all those municipalities, the parks, the garbage, the police, overtime, firefighters, on and on and on and on, then your city kind of starts to go into disarray.
Well, and it's even crazier because for most businesses historically, prior to COVID, the biggest expense on their books was office rent. Almost universally for most major businesses, the thing they're spending the most money on is office rent. So if you're a business and you can get rid of your biggest expense, why would you not do that? Of course you would. You stand to make more money.
Thus begins the loop. If you can't get tenants who don't pay rent, you lose that income, you can't pay the mortgage, you can't pay the taxes, you need a bailout, the city goes into disarray, they can't pay overtime, and round and round and round and round and we go.
It gets pretty spooky and pretty scary, and we don't really know where it goes. Like it feels like it's inevitable that there's going to be this moment in time 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now where all of a sudden these office buildings are worth nothing.
Getting people back into these buildings to work creates lunch hours, the lunch rush. It creates money flow into cities in certain areas. Now, there are successful parts of New York City and Chicago and California that will not even notice anything because there are hedge funds and there are businesses and doctors and law firms that need office spaces. But a lot of these commercial businesses that need this space will get crushed.
I used to work in office leasing a million years ago, and the rule of thumb used to be 250 square feet per person. Well, now you've got accounting firms that'll do like shared desks. So you'll have to come in X amount of days a week, but you overlap and you don't have your own desk. You share a desk with someone. So half the office comes in on some days, half comes in on the others. And then you've got law firms not being as big, not having as many lawyers in the office. Like it's just not, there aren't these massive tenants that there used to be 15, 20 years ago when I started, when somebody would take 100,000 square feet in a building. It just doesn't really exist on the scale that it used to.
As the non-MBA layman, it sounds like a mess.
It's not great. I heard someone say something, I think I even saw it on like LinkedIn, but I heard someone, some DC office person was saying, survive to 25 was like their, which just is, I feel, which is just awful. Like I don't love hearing that. I don't wish that on anyone, but survive to 25 does not give me a lot of hope that things are going to get better quickly for them. So now we're going to answer the people. Biggest question we've gotten lately, and honestly have gotten our entire lives, is why do we sell our personal residences every 2 to 3 years? So I know my answer. What would you tell people? How would you explain it?
Something our spouses really love. Oh, they just love this part of our life.
Dad said it. Our dad said it to his wife the other day, and she was just like, "But why?" And you know, my wife feels the same way. It's like, "But why? We like this house." Well, because the next one's going to be better.
Very simply, the way my family, brother, father, mother, sister, wives, the way my family sees real estate is different from how you see real estate. We see real estate as money-producing assets. And we live in homes every 2 years because if it's your primary residence for 2 years, you get a tax exemption as a married couple up to $500,000 on the sale of the home. And if you're single, it's $250,000. That is the short answer. That's why we do it. We see homes as money-producing assets, and we love to make money in real estate, and that is the short answer. It's a career for us, but it comes at an expense. It's very hard on our spouses. My wife is 24 weeks pregnant. It doesn't make life any easier in the future with the unknowns and all that. Moving is horrible. It sucks. We've been doing real estate now for 30, like our whole lives. I don't care how efficient and how little clothing I have, moving sucks. It is such a pain in the ass to move. But we do it because, again, the tax exemption is amazing. That's my answer.
Okay. So the slightly more complicated version of that is the reason it's every 2, 3. I think we lived in a home once for 4 years, maybe. But it's what we're really trying to do is make 50% of the money we put into a home. So if it costs us $200,000 to buy a home, and we put $100,000 into it, we've got $300,000 of our cash in the deal, plus whatever debt there was to buy it. We want to make $150,000 on the 300. So once we get to that point, we sell the home. Recently, because of the way homes have gone up in value, that has been pretty quickly. On the house I most recently lived in, it was a year. Now, we couldn't sell it in a year because we wanted the tax exemption. And the reason the tax exemption is important is, really, if you make $100,000 tax-free, it's like making $200,000. How hard is $200,000 to earn? It's pretty darn hard to earn. And you know what's easier than earning $200,000? Selling your house and moving. As much of a pain in the butt as it is, you know what? Like if Drew and I are getting handed each a $100,000 check every 2 years, that's like a $50,000 salary every year or more after taxes and everything else that comes with it. It's like we have to work less. Honestly, like that's really part of it. And then we can take that money and we can invest in other projects and accumulate other properties and assets. But that's a slightly more complicated version of why we do it. I also have gotten to the point where I just get bored after a while and I'm like, I gotta get out of here.
I want to be perfectly clear. He says work less. It's a different kind of work because we buy shit boxes and we fix them up. And it's not work less, it's work really hard and barely live in the house and fix it up to be beautiful. And by the time I get it to exactly where I want it and my wife loves it and everything is beautiful and the kitchen is gorgeous and the trim and the paint and the garage, hey honey, time to go. It's very, very difficult. So work less, I take personally, it's not a phrase I would use because we work very hard 8 months out of those 2 years to get these homes ready to go. And by the time I'm done working and I get to enjoy my hard work in this beautiful home, he calls me and says, hey, we got to sell it.
We don't have to get 9 to 5s because we're able to, like, it is, when you've got a couple $100,000 coming in or whatever amount you make off the sale of the next one, it is a nice, like, backstop to what you also make in your job. And I think you make a good point about the fixer-uppers. I do find it funny on the internet when people are like, oh, you're flippers, landlords, you're scum, da 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 da. None of you would ever buy the homes that we buy. None of you would ever live in these places. You would never buy them. Like roofs caving in. Like you would never ever buy these. You would never spend the time to fix these up. I'm so sick of that narrative because it's just not true. Like you wouldn't. These homes would fall down if we didn't buy them. We went to this one house where there was like literally like rats crawl. Like she asked us to sit down on the furniture. We're like, I don't really want to because like I think there's an animal crawling through there. Like these are the places we're buying. Like no one is buying these except for investors and builders. And I went through another one. The other day that was like, there was like plants growing in the house, and we're getting people giving us a hard time about it.
There's a scene in Silence of the Lambs where Clarice discovers Buffalo Bill, and if you could picture where he lives, these are the houses that we buy. The smells, the darkness, just the grossness of the homes. I wanted to give the people a visual. Like these are the kinds of homes that we buy, and he's not kidding. I remember this house. I remember this woman, and it made my skin crawl. I wanted to get out of there. Picture Hoarders, picture Silence of the Lambs. Like just get me out of this house. But that's the kind of stuff. If it's in a good neighborhood, I'll buy it.
And then picture taking your wife there and being like, "This is where we're gonna live, sweetie," and she's like, "Are you kidding me?" But and then we fix it up and we sell it to a nice family. Yes, we make money on that. But again, I don't believe anyone's buying these properties but builders and people like us.